Alright everyone, Justine with Blue Jay Orchids. Welcome back to another Orchid Wine Down Wednesday. And we are going to talk about preparing your orchids for a show and the show results from the Sarasota Orchid Society. As far as like how my orchids did that I put into the display. So we'll talk a little bit about how I prep them and like some other important stuff to know. And at the end I'll show you maybe a little sneak peek of the haul, and I'll also show you which orchids I put in the display that got ribbons. And we are drinking another Keel and Curry winery, and then I figured out that they have a description of the wine on the bottle. This one says, "This fresh wine is light and crisp with the color of pale gold sunlight. A perfect blend of strawberry juices and sweet grapes to produce flavors of ripe strawberries, peach, apple, and a touch of honey. Pair with sweet dessert, tropical fruit, or blue cheese." And then somewhere, best served chilled. So I like how they actually describe how to drink it because I don't know enough about wine to know that stuff yet. It's goals, people, goals. But yeah, I just learned that. So pour a little bit of this. I chilled it. Didn't do ice. It smells really good. So, cheers. It's good. I can actually taste a little bit of the pear, a little bit of honey. Strawberry too. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, now is what we're going to talk about. So, we'll start with this. I think you can see this. Let's see. So this is one of my Vandas. This was a rescue Vanda. I actually got it on clearance. And it was one of my first Vandas, which is why it's a little palm tree like, but I almost didn't bring it. I was actually a little bit embarrassed to bring this plant, but it had bloomed nicely and the flowers were holding. So I decided the flowers were okay enough where it could go in the display and they could put other stuff around it. I'm glad I ended up taking it though because it got second place. So the point to that would be, you know, it's very intimidating to put an orchid in the show. I am part of the Sarasota Orchid Society, so I'm putting it into the display. So I don't have to do the paperwork as far as if you're putting a plant in to be judged individually, you have to fill out all this paperwork and do a lot more work. If you belong to a society, they give you a deadline. You go and you check your plants and you try to groom them. So you try to make sure that you stake them soon enough so that the flowers, what would be a good example? Well, on a Vanda, sometimes, a lot of the time they'd be hanging, so they're kind of harder to do. A lot of my Vandas are potted because I do show a lot of my plants in orchid shows. And just because this is an easier way for me to grow them. But you see how I have it staked? So one of the things about staking it is you don't want the stake to be above the flower stem. Because you don't want the judges looking at the flower and then like running into a stake with their eye. They're not going to appreciate that. So with this one, it had some bad leaves because I don't bring it in enough. And so you don't want any bad leaves on it, so I took a lot of the leaves off of it. Checked for any pest. I mean, it's a healthy plant, it's just the bottom leaves got burned and I let it get too cold too often. These guys really should be brought in anytime it gets below 60. I push the limit and only really bring it in if it's gonna be below 45 maybe for an extended period of time, like more than one day. But in saying that, it's not like it's out in the open. It's actually growing pretty close to my house, so it does have buffer. So it's not like it's just out in the middle of my yard and it's going to experience that full cold. And I'm also looking at the weather and it's saying it's going to be like mid to low 40s for like an hour or two, not like an all night like rain 40, because that makes a difference. Wet and cold is very bad. But vandas will drop leaves, so if you are trying to keep a nice show plant, you want it to look a little nicer than this. But saying that, I mean, just go ahead and see if your orchid can win something. For example, I said I was going to talk about results at the end, but I lied. So this here was Best Oncidium. And I'm like, it's pretty good. I mean, plant's healthy, new growth is correct. It was opening up at the right time. I brought it inside and I staked it and I put it under a grow light to let it open up and grow correctly. So, I mean, I staked it well. See how the stake is like kind of hidden and it's drooping forward. So I staked it well. But I'm like, it only has one flower, one spike. It's not that impressive. But the one spike that it does have was impressive enough where it's got this. So this was the Best Oncidium in the show. So that was really cool. This is my first best ribbon. Or like best in class ribbon, I guess. I have another blue ribbon from the Venice show last year. So I now have a total of 3 blue ribbons, 2 red ribbons, counting that one, and 1 third place ribbon. So I've only had 1 orchid that hasn't won something, so that's really cool. And hoping to have some good orchids for the Venice show, that'd be fun. But yeah, I'm competitive, so I like growing things to put into shows, and just joining the society and being part of the society is a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, made some friends. I mean, I definitely encourage people to reach out to their local societies and try them. But yeah, this smells amazing. Kind of like vanilla. Kind of like a dessert. Like almost like sugar cookies. Very awesome. But yeah, I was very excited about this. I have some pictures of it in the display that I'll share. I'll put this back here. And then I have another Vanda too that I put in a pot. Normally I grow it hanging, but to display Vandas, it's easier to put them in a pot so that they don't get moved all around when they're trying to figure out where they go in the display. It's just easier on the person making the display that way. So I already undid it and put it back to where it goes. So I have pictures of it though. But yeah, so there's a lot to consider. You want your leaves to look good on the plant, so if you have like brown tips on the leaves, you try to cut them in a way that matches the flow of the plant. For example, I'm very impatient, so what you should do when you get a new orchid is you should gradually adjust it to your light. I tend to be very patient for the first few days, and I'm like, okay, it's fine. And then I'll throw it into way too much light too fast, and then I burn a lot of my plants. Trying not to do that, but yeah, I have a tendency to do that. Working on it. I was gonna say I got better, but the last plant I got, I did the same thing. In all fairness, I'm growing in areas that I didn't used to grow in, so I'm still kind of learning. But yeah, the last plant I bought, I'm like, oh, it'll be fine here. I put up more shade cloth and burn the leaves, but you live and you learn, right? The benefits of being able to grow outside and the downside of being able to grow outside. Yes. But yeah, so let's do a little kind of like 10 more minutes of just like kind of an in order overview of how to prep a plant. And I will try to stay on task. No promises. So step 1, find the plant that is spiking in bud or you think is going to be ready. You probably want to have a couple different ones because things happen. Temperature change, damage, pests, all sorts of things can happen to those flowers. Find the flowers that you think it's a good idea to spray pest preventative a little bit before the show so that you kind of make sure those plants are protected. So I think I sprayed at the end of like the month before the show. I sprayed like a fungicide and a pesticide not too long ago. Recent enough where it's still in like the plant's tissue. And then I was a little late. I did have a plant spiking that I was thinking would be a good candidate. And then we had a super bad windstorm because I grew outside and a lot of the buds got knocked off. I was very sad. But it still opened enough where I had 2 spikes on the plant. So I still took that one and it did win a first place ribbon. So that was cool. But yeah, it could have been just a little better because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. Locate the plant, protect the plant. You don't want to change the environment of the plant too much, too drastically, because temperature can trick plants either into opening faster or it can create bud blast where they'll just drop. Cattleyas, phals tend to be the worst at that. So what I did is when it got closer to the show, I just kind of kept an eye where they were. I brought the Vanda in because it was so windy and rainy. And the Oncidium I brought in and put it under a grow light because we were just having awful weather. But you want to try not to change the environment too much. And then you want to make sure what is growing, if it's a Cattleya, you want to stake it. So, guys, give you a little sneak peek. I bought this at the Sarasota Orchid Show. So you see how they staked the new growth so it's upright? So if you're displaying a plant, you want to stake the new growth. And then, because some flowers are so top heavy, they'll actually like snap the new growth. So this is a good example of how you would stake a new growth. You want to stake it, you want to kind of make sure that you're not changing environments. You want to keep the lighting in the same direction because you don't want to have flowers growing one way and then you stake it and change it and all of a sudden you have upside down flowers. Given some plants, you're just going to have so many flowers, there's not something you can do. But it definitely, ideally, you want to stake all the flowers in the same direction, facing forward, to give your plant the best display possible. I don't have a good representation of that. And most people are growing their plants potted that they are displaying. There are a few mounted plants, but I'd say most mounted plants don't make it into the displays. I mean, there are some that will get judged and some that make it on the individual table, but the majority of people have their plants in pots just for the ease of movement. So I have a few more things. I'm just trying to think in my mind to make sure I cover everything. So one of the other things when you're in a society and you're displaying plants. So you've staked your plant, you've protected your plant, you're getting ready to take your plant to the show. You have a few more days. So the day before, give your plants a very good drink because they're not going to get a drink for however long the show's going to last. And you don't necessarily want to water them right before you're taking them to the show. So the day before the show, give your plants a very good drink. And then you'll get classification numbers, typically from a society. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get some tape, write your name on the tape, and the classification number. And you want to put that somewhere on the pot where you're not going to lose it. This is how you make sure you get your plant back, because there are probably going to be duplicates. And you want to make sure the plant you take to the show is the one that you take home. And then it's a very weird feeling to kind of just drop off your plants. And then it's like, for me anyway, it's like you leave them and it's like, I forgot something. Where are my plants? And then it's like getting them to the show is another little ordeal too. But the key is to have good boxes, and you can put different things to make sure they're not moving around. It's the same way you would bring home plants, just with the added stress. But yeah, and then so you want clean leaves, you don't want a lot of extras, like if you have weeds in your pot, try to pull them out. You don't want leaves, you don't want bugs, just kind of common sense stuff. I mean, it's very intimidating the first few times. Even this time was intimidating. And I'm always questioning, like, is it worth taking this plant? I mean, I was on the fence about 2 plants. I only really felt proud of the one. And the one plant, like I said, I almost didn't bring it, only had 1 spike. Because, like, you get intimidated to bring, like, a little plant, because you see all these massive plants. But yeah, my little itty baby 1 spike got best Oncidium. And yes, I will keep throwing that out there because I'm excited. But yeah, so I mean, don't be scared, just try it. What's the worst thing that can happen? Your plant doesn't win anything, or you don't make it in the display. I mean, you didn't lose anything, you still gained some experience. But hope that gives you a little bit of insight to what it's like to enter a show. And I do have a little surprise. This I didn't put in the show, but I've been waiting for it to open forever, so I will show you guys. This is my special guest today. Isn't it beautiful? Smells amazing too. So this is a Walkeriana. This is the Alba form, because it's all white. Normally they're pink. Then see a little bit of green. Where'd the tag go? Here it is. Very faded. Hold it this way. Walkeriana, species Var Alba polyploid. So I think polyploid means it's like a bigger plant. So the flowers are pretty big. But yeah, I waited from Thanksgiving up until, made me wait until 2024 to see the flowers. I'd say it's worth it. Yeah, fragrant too. Very nice. So put this one back. What else? Like, what would be helpful to communicate as far as setting up an orchid for the show? So, at our last meeting before the show, they had one of our members come in and give a talk. And they're talking about, you know, you want to stake it correctly, not to go too long, and then cleaning the leaves. You can use a cloth with like tonic water, I think they said. You can also use 7-Up, which I personally have not tried. You can also use like the Lysol wipes without bleach. Very important to not use the bleach. I personally typically use the Lysol wipes because I've already been using them on my Phalaenopsis, because what happens with the phals, especially like the novelty phals, they'll get like that black mold. Or not really mold, but it's a little bit of like a black residue from the sticky sap. So I find those Lysol wipes tend to take it off pretty well. And then I also will clean the leaves on the top and the underside and look for pest. Because you can, if you have spider mites and you're cleaning the leaves, your thing will turn either like reddish or it will turn like green from the pigment of the leaves coming off. We have so much burning around us that actually my cloths when I was cleaning everything was like black, which is kind of like sad. But that's not the point. I digress. Yes. But so when you're looking for a plant that would go in the show, you're looking for when you need it to be blooming. Is it going to be open in time? You're also looking at the overall health. For example, I had another dendrobium that had a good spike, but the actual plant looked like it had rot. So I didn't want to bring that because I didn't want to spread rot to anything else. That wouldn't be nice. You don't want to be the person that's like patient zero in the orchid community. Because I don't know, but a lot of people don't talk about it, but orchids can actually have viruses. And orchid viruses can't be cured. But yeah, orchids can have viruses. And you don't always know without testing. And there's a lot of people that handle it differently. I just try to pick healthy plants and be aware, and then just treat every plant like it has a virus. So like when I'm cutting something, I'm making sure I'm flaming my tools, I clean my stations. I try to do as best I can. And that's kind of, there's some people that are paying tons and tons of money for plants. Some people actually test a plant before they buy it, or buy a plant, test it immediately before they bring it to their collection. I'm a hobby grower, so 1, I don't have that kind of money. 2, I don't have like the resources to do that. I don't currently own any tests. But I would like to maybe test in the future, so I don't kind of know. I suspect that I probably have some virus because I think everyone basically has a virus plant, not to scare people, but there's just so much virus out there, and a lot of it is asymptomatic. But again, not trying to scare anyone, not trying to start any debates, and I truly am still learning on the subject. So like, I don't want to start anything, I don't want to scare anyone, I just want people to be aware that there are orchid viruses out there. Because I remember when I started, I didn't know that was a thing. So it's just very important to make sure you're doing correct culture practices. The Walkeriana really had nothing to do with this other than it's just one of my plants blooming right now, and it's been too gloomy to give you guys any bloom videos. And I'm proud of it, so I wanted to show it. It's the only real reason for the walker. But, so I think we'll wrap up this Orchid Wine Down Wednesday. Thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you, Keel and Curry Winery. They ship, have a website, feel free to check them out. So far I've tried 2 of the 4 bottles they sent me, and both of them have been very good. And as always, keep growing, people.